So today, it's a day for exploring ways that we can know and embody rooted practice. And the Buddha's very core and foundational teaching is about the root of all things. But to know this and to really get a felt sense for that understanding and insight, we need to come back to the ways in which we can actually know what is arising moment to moment, and that comes through being rooted in our bodies. So today I'd like to explore this possibility of rooting and being rooted in our practice 4 ways. The first way is through the roots of our body and our embodiment, and to know these through the practice of meditation, but also through Qigong. And rooting in the body for Qigong is so beautifully immediate because so much of the practice is done standing. We start to feel our feet on the ground. The roots of the body in Qigong, in classical Chinese thinking, are considered to be not only the feet, but the legs of the body as well. And they create this comparison with trees. And they look at trees and they have a lot, the ancient Chinese saw a lot of wisdom and many teachings that trees offer, and one of them was simply, how can we live the thousands of years sometimes that trees are able to live? How they get rooted. Okay? And we age from the feet up. You know, when the feet get dry and start to crack, it's like the ends of the roots of a tree, and they get dried and they're not able to absorb a lot of the nourishment. When the roots start getting weaker, the tree can't sustain stronger winds and life that blow, right? A big theme today, especially with the changing weather patterns of spring. Already difficult navigating of our own experience is heightened sometimes when the external winds of spring and changing weather patterns make it harder to plan. Harder to get through kind of a week saying, oh, is it going to rain or is it going to be sunny? We're lucky today it's sunny, but yesterday was lots of rain, sun. So the legs often also get, unfortunately, weaker as we get older. We lose a lot of muscle mass, and falling balance issues can become really problematic. But to really strengthen our body's roots, the feet, the legs, can give us access to just standing our ground, moving through life with more independence, moving through life with a lot more ability to continue walking the path, both in a physical way and metaphorically. The practice of Qigong is a beautiful complement to meditation as well, because so often in meditation we are given these instructions to sense and feel into our body, but we're given those instructions sitting down, where it can actually become very easy to dissociate from the physical sense. Eyes closed, inward attunement, and it's almost as though the body is just this lump sitting there. Right? But the orientation of meditative practice and of Dhamma teachings is the liberation of citta, of the heart. And the heart's not just ruminating thoughts. It is affected by that, but the heart is here in the body. And we often can benefit from the ease and the vitality of a settled body as a way to really bring the disturbances and obstructions, psychological, emotional, of mind. You can bring those disturbances into more ease, and it happens much more easefully when the body is also settled. We can discharge a lot of the rumblings and the rattlings of energy that arise as a result of our ruminating thoughts. Right? It ends up lodged often in the body, and when we're just sitting still, it can be very difficult to actually let those energies subside or be discharged, and it becomes a little more challenging to find that balance. But as we just experienced, very simple movements, right, can invite that quality of the bodily formations, the kaya sankhara, to be experienced. We can become more sensitive to them, and therefore they can really support the movements of mind. We can become a lot more able to come back into the home of a more settled body, when that is made available. And I'm really delighted that, within especially the insight meditation community, there is a very respected Ajahn who loves Qigong, Ajahn Suchito, and I met him and I discovered that he has a real passion for Qigong, and he shares a lot of the same views that I also share. I just was so just gladdened, my heart was thinking, I'm not just making this up, am I? So it was really nice to have that commonality and that validation in many ways shared by someone who has so much experience in the world of insight meditation. So in the Qigong practice we'll do later, I'll explore more of these roots of body, but I just wanted to give a little introduction to that and why I like to give so much emphasis to to the body and to movements for it. But the ways that we'll explore, we started with the breath, right? And then also the actual body, the legs and the feet, strengthening them, connecting to them. And there's also the root of energy, and this foundational flow through the body. And then there's also the root of movement. Yeah. So we'll explore that when we get to our Qigong practice. The second approach and consideration for rooted practice is considering what roots represent when we see them, because we don't actually often see them. Right? They're unseen, they're hidden, they're deep beneath the earth. When we look at a tree, some of us may actually look and sense into the roots of that tree, but many of us may not even give it a thought because it's unseen. But to experience the root of the root experiences is to go beneath the surface of things. So often what we end up paying attention to as we go about life are the result of something that was triggered by a root cause. And we get a headache, and that's the symptom. But what is the root cause of that headache? We get neck pain, and we think, that's frustrating. It cascades possibly into all kinds of other stories, what I should do, what I didn't do, what I need to do more of. Okay? But what is the root cause? And what is the root cause of the struggle and the stress and the unfolding of more and more tension as a result of that? Again, Western medicine tends to treat the symptoms, not the cause, not the root. And Chinese medicine, very different, looks at the root cause for imbalance and disease and works to support and treat that. Right? So in Dharma practice, it's also a really beautiful invitation on retreat days like today to slow down the normal distractions and pulls of life and to give ourselves time to go beneath the surface of experience more and look at what is causing and triggering something arising in my reactivity or in my habituated ways, and how can I actually make that time to not just get blown around in the outer world and pay more attention to the subtle arising, the unseen phenomenon that are really at the heart of so much of our friction, the cause of the friction, the heart and the root source of distress. Okay. So we go beneath the surface of our experience. We start making inquiries, but again, not so head-dominated. It's a felt sense, like, what's it like? What is that feeling like if someone looks like they're not really liking the Qigong practice for me? They look bored. Okay, that's triggering something in me. Like, that's the symptom I'm just seeing. But what's happening in me? Oh, maybe they actually don't feel well today. So why have I gotten so maybe pulled out in story when I can just attend to the unseen rattling here, send them goodwill, wish them well. Take care of the disturbance by going in and sensing what is maybe this root cause of my concern about someone liking or not liking something that's happening. Yeah. But in our day-to-day life, of course, that is a little harder to do. We're, quite pulled and enticed, seduced even by a lot that's in our sensory world that's, pulling us out, and we're often kind of looking out to see, how does this affect me? What can I know from this external stimuli? What is happening in the external world that helps me make sense of what's arising for me? Right? And we get very pulled out, very externalized and grasping. So opportunities like today, going more in, seeing beneath the symptoms and going more to the source. Yeah. That's what a teaching is from wood energy, and the roots unseen are what anchor us. They can be a cause or a symptom or a source of distress, but they can also, when nourished well, they can be what steadies us as we move through more challenging moments in our day, in our experience. And when I think about spring and wood, my mind often goes to Chinese classical frameworks around seasonality and related elements. And some of you may know some about this. I won't go into it too much, but the associated energy for spring is wood energy. Okay? And that's most directly symbolized by trees. And trees have so much of their capacity to grow up is this soft-rooted structure that we can't see. And the first thing to happen when a tree germinates is the seed softens, right? Germination happens, and it goes down. The root goes down. The growth goes down. Right? It doesn't go straight up towards the sun. Right? It goes down. Right? When the roots are there, and then something starts germinating, goes and then up. Yeah. So, I think we can benefit a lot from bringing our attention to touching into that in and down capacity when we sit with meditation. Noticing the flurry, the leaves, the branches, and then going deeper. Wood's energy is also beautifully about spring's optimism, its dynamism, its growth. Right? It's about clear vision, clear plans, manifesting things in flowers, greening leaves, really yang energy that is expansive and moving outwards. Right? And for us humans, we get excited when we see that in spring, after, especially in England, the long, soggy winters that we have. But if our wish to be spring-like in our growth is unrooted, if we don't address some of these deeper capacities to stay steady, we can feel very easily pulled out into the world and uprooted. And that can feel hard on our plans. Like if we want to actually do something and implement something, it can be a lot harder to manifest if we don't have those steady, grounded roots. And that results in a sense of frustration. Things aren't going according to plan. It rains on our parade. The beauty, though, of nature when it starts to grow is that the winds are strengthening that growth. The change, the unpredictability, the hailstorms and then sunshine, the trees actually get stronger from wind. They did an experiment, I think, in a biosphere where they tried to grow tall trees in Arizona, and they wouldn't grow because there was no wind. There was nothing to strengthen their heartwood. So we sort of need these opportunities sometimes to test what's happening in our experience, but it's helpful to stay really close to our roots, grounded and steady as those winds start to blow. In nature as well, we see the growth, but it's not goal-orientated. Right? Nature just blooms for the sake of blooming and for the sake of the cycle and the beauty and the movement of creation into dissolution. Right? But what happens with humans? We start to grow, we start to want. And especially in our consumer-heavy and kind of orientated society, our plans and our visions tend to really bank on achieving and getting something. Right? But in the Buddha's teachings, he says, this clear seeing, this wood capacity to grow and know experience, we often, as ordinary and untrained humans, we're actually not seeing reality clearly at all. We're seeing this growth as something that achieves and gives us something permanent or reaffirms our sense of self. We grasp at external sense objects that arise in our experience as a way to kind of feel like we are okay, or that it somehow validates a sense of who we are. And that's the third way that we can look at rooted practice. What are we seeing? How are we seeing reality? Most of us are seeing it in a slightly distorted way. And the Buddha teaches this in this beautiful teaching called The Root of All Things. It's the first discourse in the Majjhima Nikaya, which is the middle-length discourses. And it's really hard to understand as a first chapter because he basically is just like, look, we all have this fundamental problem of not seeing reality clearly. We are actually deluded. It's a big problem. We're seeing things as fixed and permanent, and this is causing us a lot of unhappiness and stress because we're looking outside of ourselves for validation and gratification, and outside of ourselves for some sort of meaning and self-affirmation, like thinking that, I can be here, for example, because of all of you, or my happiness depends on others. Or we get caught up in thinking a lot about what other people are thinking about us. How do we measure up to them? How do we compare to them? Will we get what they have? Can I do Qigong like that person? Am I going to be as flexible as the teacher? Will I ever get rid of my health like all these other people claim they have? Will I get enlightened? Like in the Buddha in this discourse lists like 24 ways that we externally try to find ourself. Right? And we're putting all the emphasis on something outside of ourselves for this happiness. And this is just this misconstrued, misunderstood way of seeing that actually we're not those things. We can slowly, through not pushing, not striving, but having, not being inert, but doing things gradually and gently and compassionately to understand the ways in which what we try to grasp at outside of ourselves causes a lot of suffering. So I was thinking recently that when I was younger, Rena mentioned I was a photojournalist, and I felt very comfortable as a photographer being silent, being quiet when I would meet new people, when I was in new situations, when I had friends that I'd just meet, because I was a photographer. I was constantly sort of looking outside my world, or at my world, to sort of make sense of what was happening for me. That was how I thought of it, to make sense of this world through photography. But I felt very comfortable in silence. And somehow, I think as I shifted more to, paradoxically, spiritual practices that were about my inner world, less about my outer world, I still tried to bridge my understanding of this deepening inner world through the outer world. Through validation from my teachers, through trying to impress friends, or give students something that I felt like they would want, and therefore I would feel like, oh, I'm doing it right, doing a good job. I'm representing these teachings, also something external, like in a more sincere and appropriate way. And then just last weekend, I was going on a short weekend trip with some friends, and they're pretty good friends of mine. But I still have noticed that I don't feel comfortable being silent around them. And I was thinking, oh, that's really interesting. I sometimes find myself, because I want them to like me more, I'm trying to fill conversational gaps or say things that are a bit witty or engaging and kind of really make this effort. And it's not really coming from inside me as a sincere feeling so much as it is me externally trying to grasp at their approval by giving something that I think they want. Right? And so I did an experiment last weekend. I sat comfortably in silence with my friends when it was just the two of us. You know, my husband and four of us would sometimes be together with their kid, but sometimes there would just be two of us, and especially when there were just the two of us, I sat comfortably, and if there was nothing that I felt was actually helpful, filled with goodwill, lighthearted, that was coming from a sincere place in me to connect, I just dropped it. And I just sat there and I extended kindness. And I felt so good. Like, oh, wow, this feels like a brightening of my heart. It feels like a lightening of my spirit. And we had a great time. I had so much of a better time because I went back to that comfort of silence, but without the need for my photography kind of to hide behind in some ways. It was just actually me. And I said, oh, that's an insight. It's like starting to see a bit more clearly my tendencies, like the Buddha describes, to externally look for who I am, reinforce how I am, who I am, what I want. Whereas actually, who I am is what I can sense, what I can feel. And that's just arising where? In the heart. And the heart is very energetically inclined. The heart really is what feels loving, feels compassionate, feels caged, feels empty, feels tightened, feels scared. And if the heart is energetically inclined in one of these ways, that informs the way that manas, the mind, churns out a lot of its proliferating stories, and it can really just get out of control sometimes, like, what about this, and then, and it's all as a result of heart just feeling this energy of, right? Scared, disappointed, nervous, or open, bright, easeful. So mindfulness is kind of this containing in of the tendency of mind, right, and heart to jumble things and then go out in this proliferating tendency. And mindfulness kind of says, what is the effect of this on the heart? And is this useful? Is this not? Is this not? Is this useful? I'm going to contain what is the tendency to go into the unuseful and cultivate and keep that which is actually useful. Insight. I don't have to talk. I don't have to fill. I don't have to be funny. I don't have to do anything. I don't really feel naturally and sincerely from a place of goodwill and wholesome brightness of my spirit to share. So, great. Clear seeing. That's growing in a wood direction that is actually generating benevolence, which is the spirit, the virtue of wood in Chinese medicine. Water has a virtue, all of these different elements, like wisdom, but benevolence is the virtue of wood. And the trees, forests, the ancient Chinese saw them as very benevolent. They provided shelter. To be humane and benevolent also requires flexibility in the way that we look at and attune to different environments. We can't just be rigid if we're going to be kind or humane. We have to make assessments and be adaptable. And that's very much represented in trees. In the root systems, they're feeding all kinds of other and informing all kinds of other life. They're also home to lots of life, trees. Birds, insects, like they provide so much support. That's also benevolence. Right? And Confucius is the one who said this one. He said, 人反对盲目. Like the humaneness is the opposite of being numb. When we're numb, we shut down. When we're numb, we stop sensing and perceiving. And it's not, oh, I'm oversensitive and it's overload. It's not that. It's just the sensing is like, oh, the quiet going in and going beneath the surface of things to see what's actually arising. That's that sensitivity. To do meditation, noticing, oh, when mind wanders, often we yank the mind back to the breath, right? Breathe. Got it. Focus on the breath. That's not sensitivity. That is just a mind-dominated activity. But what the Buddha was actually inviting us to do, patisamvedi, right? Be sensitive to the breath as it moves through the whole body. Be sensitive to piti, joy, rapture. Sensitive to sukha, ease, content. Be sensitive to chitta sankhara, the formations and habit energies of heart-mind. Be sensitive to, right, these qualities. Not just force them to do things, but to allow for, to meet, to linger in them. Right? And then that allows us to see more clearly what is at the root of our experience. And these roots sometimes do produce unwholesome and difficult expressions of, delusional thinking, of wanting more, of clinging, of craving, of fear, of shame, of anger, of hatred, of ill will. But implicit in his teachings is also a different type of root. When we nourish our source of presence, when we know our experience more immediately and directly, we can then use the tools and skills of mindfulness to discern what's arising and then choose the wholesome roots that are nourished from our experience. Okay. Goodwill, compassion, kindness, brightness, equanimity, a steadfastness, a gladdening of the heart. Right. And this leads to the fourth way that we can cultivate rooted practice. Right? The confidence to go forward in the direction of something well-nourished and good in the world, in ourselves. Right? To have the faith and trust, sada, the faith, that this is possible. To know that we can free up the constraints, we can meet a tangled heart by going beneath the surface of that outward expression of the tangled heart. What's the felt sense like? How can I untangle? How can a knot be loosened? Right? And then we go from there with that brightening of energy, brightening of spirit into growing from these nourished and good, wholesome roots, that which the world so much needs, which we as part of this world can really beautifully bring into fruition. Especially as our inner winds and the world's bigger, stronger winds are blowing. How do we anchor into the rooted steadiness of knowing our experience and seeing through the misperceptions and misunderstandings of it, and then Wood's flexible, benevolent, adaptable, creative energy, like the confidence to actually trust in this to be good. Go, do, grow in that direction, because otherwise, what's the alternative? Yeah? Let the root systems kind of just get neglected. We often don't look into the roots. We don't nourish them. We don't feed them what they need. And then we feel unhappy. But we start this from where? Body. We start from breath. We start from our here, moment to moment, knowing and feeling and sensing, as a way to then establish, what is really skillful in meeting the myriad phenomenon of the world, and all the named manifestations of our experience, the human condition, right? We can't bypass that. We have to know it. And then through knowing it, we can be free. In the Tao Te Ching, Tao is the nameless and the named, the manifest and the source. These two arise from sameness but differ in name. We can know the subtle and the bounded. All of that is one. All of that, the manifest and the source, the named and all the nameless, totality, all one. We start by knowing it moment to moment, to then also know the deathless, the unnamed, the boundless, the freedom, the nibbana. So we will use that as a foundation for exploring our practices today. May the fruits of our practice be growing from these opportunities to find connection, deepen respect for our roots.